organization specific rules and process for cybersecurity. Assign the responsibilities and corresponding authorities required to perform the cybersecurity activities. Support the implementation of the cybersecurity, including the provision of resources and the management of the cybersecurity processes and related procedures. Institute and maintain a cybersecurity culture, including competence management, awareness management, and continuous improvement systems. Perform an organizational cybersecurity audit. Manage the sharing of the cybersecurity information. Institute and maintain management systems that support the cybersecurity activities and provide evidence that the tool used does not adversely affect the cybersecurity. So it has very different phases like cybersecurity governance, cybersecurity culture, risk management, organizational security, information sharing, management systems, tool management, information security management. Each section talks a detailed process about the cybersecurity management. Then comes the section or class 6, which is project dependent cybersecurity management. So this section talks the allocation of responsibilities and the planning of cybersecurity activities, mainly dealing with the requirements, addressing the management of cybersecurity development activities for specific projects. It also applies to the cases where tailoring can be applied, like reusing the components, using out of context development, or using an off the shelf component such as open source codes. This is usually assigned to the product or project manager of a development team based on planned or designed function or component. The reuse of items and the components is a possible development strategy that can be applied with or without modifications to an item, component, or their respective operational environments. A component can be developed based on an assumed context, also called out of context. An organization can develop generic components for different applications and different customers, either prior to engagement or giving the supplier a basis from which they can derive requirements for its development. For example, a microcontroller can be developed out of context. On the other hand, an off-the-shelf component can be used without customization and integrated as a part of development. An example of this is a third-party software library or an open source software development component. However, customizations and or modifications can introduce vulnerabilities that may not have been considered for the original item or component. So there also maybe have been previously known or evolved attacks or techniques, newly emerged vulnerabilities learned via information sharing, or a change of assets since its original planning and development. If the original item or component was developed according to the standard, the reuse of specified based on the existing work products. If the item or component was not originally developed according to the document, the reuse can be based on the existing documentation with the rationale. Vulnerability analysis must be re-evaluated for reused components, especially for out of context, off the shelf, or modified ones. Finally, a cybersecurity assessment independently judges and certifies the achieved degree of cybersecurity of an item or component, and it should include a recommendation for acceptance, conditional acceptance, or rejection. This can be based on judgment of whether the objective of this document are achieved, backed by multiple skills, knowledge, and experience in the relevant integrated fields to be validated. Both cybersecurity case and cybersecurity assessment documents provide input for the decision to release for post-development. So like I mentioned, in project dependent cybersecurity activities also there are many different sections starting from 6.4.1 to 6.4.9. Alright, let's jump into the next one, which is class 7, continuous cybersecurity activities. Friends, this section cites and emphasizes cybersecurity efforts and measures to be applicable on all the phases of aspects of business lifecycle, including outside specific projects. It identifies and defines the activities that provide information for ongoing risk assessment and vulnerability management of EE system until the end of support. So basically only these 4 classes: cybersecurity monitoring, cybersecurity event assessment, vulnerability analysis, and vulnerability management. Each section can be discussed in detail. Let's talk about cybersecurity event management. So this process determines a cybersecurity event's level of impact and appropriate responses. A cybersecurity event needs to be analyzed to determine if the event affects an item or component based on vulnerability analysis. So it is having an interdependency, like I mentioned. Considering the risk assessment, the response procedures may be applied in post-development phases. The following information is used as input for decision making corresponding to an incident. Those are results from the triage of cybersecurity information, cybersecurity records for post-development, vulnerability analysis reports from the product development, the organization's defined criteria for invoking incident response. Then what is vulnerability analysis? This process examines gaps and assesses if the said weakness can be exploited to launch an attack. These security flaws and events must be analyzed to identify vulnerabilities, examples of which are missing requirements or specifications, architectural or design weakness including incorrect design of security protocols, implementation weakness and incorrect implementation of security protocols including the hardware and software bugs, weakness in the operational process and procedures including misuse and inadequate user training, use of outdated or depreciated functions including cybersecurity attack algorithms. So then finally the vulnerability management. This section enumerates of the tracking and the overseeing company's treatment of vulnerabilities. After the assessment of a cybersecurity incident or event, identified vulnerabilities should be managed based on a rationale that addresses the corresponding risk. Rationales can include arguments such as verification report that shows the vulnerability has been eliminated, or through an analysis that cites the risk, determines and risk treatment of the vulnerability. The risk treatment should be based on the results of an vulnerability analysis and risk determination performed and recommended as part of the risk acceptance. In such instances, the rationale for risk acceptance must be documented. If a risk treatment results in a change of item or component, change management must be applied. If new cybersecurity information becomes available that invalidates the existing rationale, the vulnerability must no longer be considered as managed. So this talks about these continuous cybersecurity activities. Then comes the risk assessment methods, what it is. So this section deals with the possible evaluation measures to determine the impact of threat to the car user. The procedure is as follows. We can talk about the entire sections, which is asset identification, the scenario identification, impact rating, attack path analysis, attack feasibility rating, risk determination, risk treatment decisions. These topics are self-explanatory, but still we can discuss about one more point here. So the ISO 21434 is setting the standard for connected car cybersecurity or reputation, like I mentioned. The safety related impacts will be derived from ISO 26262, and impact rating of the damage scenario shall be determined to the following: whether it is severe, major, moderate or negligible. So basically the impact rating can help to analyze the path of the attack and then to determine the risks and then to treat the risk in a better way. So the risk treatment decision is like addressing the identified risk by selecting a suitable risk treatment option. A risk treatment option must be determined based on the impact categories, attack paths and result from the risk determination. Then comes the chapter 9, which is a concept phase, and the chapter 10, which is product development. Basically the chapter 9 defines the items and their environment, serving as the basis for the subsequent activities. Cybersecurity goals are specified for each item based on the assessment of cybersecurity risks identified by the user methods in the risk assessment phase. Cybersecurity requirements applied to an item and assumptions made about the operational environment can reduce the risk of an item. Cybersecurity goals are identified as top-level cybersecurity requirements, while cybersecurity claims are used to explain why the risk treatment is deemed adequate. The cybersecurity concept is derived from the cybersecurity goals. It describes the realization of the cybersecurity goals in terms of cybersecurity requirements that are allocated to the components of the preliminary architectural design or the operational environment. Furthermore, the cybersecurity concept provides the basis for achievement of cybersecurity goals via identified requirements. So then in the product development, the chapter describes the standard specification of the cybersecurity requirements and the architectural design related to the left leg of the development wheel model, which means a sample workflow for the product development and the integration and verification activities corresponding to the right leg of the wheel model. These cybersecurity activities are applied to the different levels of abstraction of architecture, namely the development of a system, hardware component or software component. So the product development will have three different phases. One is refinement of cybersecurity requirements and architectural design, integration and verification, specific requirements for the software development. So what is this refinement of cybersecurity requirements and architectural design includes? Those are understanding and complying with the cybersecurity requirements from a higher level to the lower level, preventing the introduction of the new vulnerabilities, identifying and managing known vulnerabilities if applicable. The cybersecurity engineering activities regarding integration and verification include verification of cybersecurity requirements, fulfillment allocated to the system or component, verification that identified vulnerabilities have been successfully managed, searching for previously unified vulnerabilities and its management. Then comes the cybersecurity validation. This chapter mainly describes the activities for validating the previously cited cybersecurity measures and activities at the vehicle level performed after the integration of the components have been completed. The item is considered in its operational environment, which is at the level of vehicle and the using the configuration intended for production and operational vehicle use, which means all the end-of-line test features disabled. Validation activities must be performed to confirm the adequacy of cybersecurity goals, the completeness, consistency, correctness, and adequacy of the item and cybersecurity requirements on the operational environment. The cybersecurity goals of an item have been achieved along with the validity of cybersecurity claims if applicable. Then comes the last section, which is production. Basically, this section covers the fabrication, assembly, and configuration of an item or component. A production control plan is created to ensure that cybersecurity requirements for post-development are applied to the item or component, ensure that it cannot be exploited during the production, ensure that additional vulnerabilities can be added during the production. A production control plan should include the rules, specifications, analysis results, and validations previously cited. It should include and apply the cybersecurity requirements for post-development and those included in production, and an outline of necessary installation procedures to achieve these requirements. It should also have a description of protection measures for components to prevent unauthorized alteration. Finally, it should enumerate the methods to confirm the cybersecurity requirements for the items, components, post-development phases are met. Then comes the distribution of cybersecurity activities, which involves supply chain analysis, request for quotation, alignment of responsibilities. So we talked about ISO 21434. In that, basically one section is very, very important, that is TARA. What is TARA? So let's have a look at here. So basically TARA is nothing but threat analysis and risk assessment. The objective of conducting TARA is self-explanatory. It aims to break down your system into threats and assessing the risks from the threats discovered. Conducting a TARA is a crucial step after the asset identification. Afterwards, beginning funneling your selected assets and features down to TARA pipeline in order to generate risk documentation of each asset. As you can imagine, corporations will have to have thousands of assets, each with their own TARA. Maintaining such documentation in secure way is a topic for another time. Upon completion, 3 phases will have to be followed. Number 1, establishing the cybersecurity goals, which is very, very important. Developing strategies within the cybersecurity concept to tackle the goals. Then the third one comes as establishing what functional cybersecurity requirements will need to comply with your concept. A TARA will help in driving all the reasoning for cybersecurity initiatives within the organization. Threat analysis starts from inception of cybersecurity plan. Organizations will need to draw inspiration from the cybersecurity plan in order to produce a document yielding a list of threats associated to features and assets identified through the process. This information will then be utilized for threat analysis. For example, you can look at the table here. We have taken some 5 different exposures that can be happening with respect to functional areas, and then we classified into the type of access, where how it can be accessed, and then the potential impact based on the scores. So when it comes to OPD port, it's only physical access and the impact is potential, no possibility of wireless. Likewise, each system can be analyzed based on the THARAS methods, and we can get the risk assessment document out of it. Okay, now we will look about the another standard, which is UNR 155. So what is UNR 155? UNR 155 stands United Nations Regulations 155, which is uniform provisions concerning the approval of vehicles with regards to cybersecurity and cybersecurity management system, which is CSMS. Yes, post the audit or checking, you will get a certification that the vehicle or the OEMs commits this cybersecurity standards. The scope of this documentation applies for the transport of passengers, transport of goods, and trailer vehicles. Mainly, the focuses are CSMS, like I mentioned, cybersecurity management system requirements. Main parts of standards are 3 parts, which is Part A, Part C, Part B, Part C. These parts shall be considered for risk assessment and mitigations to be implemented by the vehicle manufacturers. Let's look about each parts in detail. First comes the Part A, which is vulnerability or attack method related to the threats. There are many sections in the Part A section, but we are taking the key points here. When you have the document, this will help you to understand how the document is. In a summary, the Part A discusses the threats regarding backend servers related to vehicles in the field, threats related to the vehicles and their communication channels, threats to vehicles regarding their update procedures, threats to vehicles regarding unintended human actions facilitating a cyber attack, threats to vehicles regarding their external connectivity and connections, then vehicle data or code, potential vulnerabilities that could be exploited if not sufficiently protected or hardened. Then comes the Part B, which talks or deals mainly with respect to the mitigations to the threat intended for the vehicle. In this section, the section talks about all the mitigations that can happen in the vehicle, but now we don't have enough time to cover everything. So each section I have taken 2 topmost important categories. So if you understood this, you can understand the complete document going through one by one in detail. So Part B talks about the mitigation, like I mentioned. Now mitigations which are related to the vehicle communication channels. If you look at here, the threat is spoofing of messages by impersonation. We'll see what is impersonation at a later part of this training, but spoofing of messages is a threat. Then for the mitigation steps, the OEMs can verify or shall verify the authenticity and the integrity of the messages that it receives, so that it can arrest this attack. Then the civil attack, in order to spoof other vehicles as if there are many vehicles on the road. So the mitigation is security control shall be implemented for storing cryptographic keys. Example, use of hardware security models. So you can also discuss in detail in the next sessions, but these are all the higher level mitigations the standard says. Then comes the mitigations to the threats which are related to the update process. So the 2 steps are here, 2 threats which are stated here are compromise of cybersecurity keys of the software provider to allow invalid update. And the mitigation can be security controls shall be implemented for storing the cryptographic keys. Then DOS will say denial of service attack against update server or network to prevent rollout of critical software updates and or unlock of customer specific features. This is a potential risk. And then the mitigation can be security controls shall be applied to backend systems where backend servers are critical to the provision of servers. There are recovery measures in case of system outage. Example, security controls can be found in OWASP. Then the measures with respect to unintended human actions facilitating a cyber attack. So let's say a threat can be innocent victim, the owner of a car or a maintenance engineer is tricked into taking an action to unintentionally load malware or enable an attack. The mitigation can be measures shall be implemented for defining and controlling user roles and access privileges based on the principle of least access privilege. Again, these are all the higher level mitigations, but how the OEM is going to implement and how are they going to prove to the certification providers is matters. Then furthermore, the threats related to external connectivity and then mitigations for that connections. Let us say diagnostic access. There can be dongles in the OBD port used to facilitate an attack or manipulate the vehicle parameters. So security controls shall be applied to the external interfaces. That would be easiest way, but in detail it will be a little conflicting one. Then mitigations to the threats which are related to potential targets of or motivations for an attack. Example, unauthorized access to the owner's privacy information such as personal identification, identity, payment of account information, address book information, location information, vehicles electronic ID, extra and extra, because these are all the data which are commonly available nowadays in the vehicles for the user's comfort, but on the same way these data to the other users a threat. So the mitigation can be, though the system design and access control, it should not be possible for unauthorized personnel to access the personal or system critical data. Examples of security controls can be found in the OWASP. Then threats related to the potential vulnerabilities that could be exploited if not sufficiently protected or hardened. Hardware or software engineered to enable an attack or fail to meet design criteria to stop an attack. So the mitigation could be cybersecurity best practices for software and hardware development shall be followed. So in the upcoming sessions, we can talk about how we can protect the software and hardware based on the different mechanism. And now this is at a higher level. So again, there are many other sections which are related to the data loss, data breach from the vehicle, physical manipulation of the system to enable an attack. So all these are under part B. So we talked about OWASP, which is nothing but Open Web Application Security Project. Then comes the part C. Basically, the part C deals about the mitigations to the threats which is outside of the vehicles. What it is. So mitigation to the threats which are related to the backend servers that we talked about. So unauthorized internet access to the server. Basically enabled, for example, by backdoors, unpatched systems, software vulnerabilities, SQL attacks or other means. So the mitigation would be security controls are applied to the backend system to minimize unauthorized access. And the same as controls can be found in the OWASP. Then threats which are related to unintended human actions. So this topic we have already discussed. The same way how the personal data can be hacked under the measures. Then physical loss of data. This is very important. Damage caused by a third party. A sensitive data may be lost or compromised due to physical damages in the cases of traffic accident or theft. Another one is like digital right management conflicts. User data may be deleted due to DRM issues. So the best practices would be for the protection of data integrity and confidentiality shall be followed for storing personal data. So this is it on UNR 155. But if you look at the document, it will be detailed sections and classes that will be available. But I hope this short summary would help you to how to approach this document, right? So let's move over again and we will see what is the ISO specification on UNR 156. Basically, this is also in similar line with UNR 155, but slight changes here. This standard is specifically for the over-the-air update. We would have already heard this term OTA, but I would like to touch upon what it is. Basically, OTA had arrived in such a way that the update in the component happens via the wireless interface. So the usual flow is the vehicle or the component manufacturer will have the components that is produced. It could be any devices, even the ECUs or the complete vehicle can come under as a product. Then when it comes to the field, the vehicle can be running in the road, or even the components which are present in the road are to be updated based on the needs, right? So the software that are to be updated in the components that will be deployed in the over-the-air server, which is generally managed by the OEM or the product owners in this case. Then the software will be pushed to the components or the vehicle ECUs, which is mainly a gateway that will download the software across wireless. Then it will store the software. This software will be updated to the hardwares which are present in the vehicle based on need with respect to prior criteria. There are some preconditions which has to satisfy to download even the software and also upload it in the vehicle. For example, if the vehicle is running on, we cannot update the engine control unit, right? So such preconditions will be defined in the process. But since there are many threads involved in the entire system, like for example accessing the OTA server and then writing a software in the vehicle that can completely take the control via this OTA is still possible. So there are many other channels. So basically this particular cybersecurity standard discusses that how we can protect the vehicles with respect to this particular element OTA. So again, the scope of the regulation is for the transport of passengers and vehicles for transport of goods and trailers. And it mainly focuses on software update management system, which is SUMS, and the vehicle requirements. Then software identification requirements, let's say software identification number, which is RXWIN. At the end of this period of validity of the certificate of compliance for software update management system, the approval authority shall, after a positive assessment, issue a new certificate of compliance for software update management system or extends its validity for a further period of 3 years. The approval authority shall issue a new certificate in cases where changes have been brought to the attention of the approval authority or its technical service and the changes have been positively reassessed. So we talked about the entire sections of ISO 21434, UNR 155, UNR 156. Now, as a summary, as a nutshell, we can see ISO 21434 mainly helps the OEM and suppliers to focus TARA and security management during the entire life cycle of the vehicles. And UN regulation number 155, which is a provision concerning the approval of vehicles with regards to cybersecurity and cybersecurity management system, basically a certification from the standard bodies. In the same way, 156 is dealing the software update and then the software update management system. So we have touched upon the key elements, key points in each specification, but I would request if you wanted to learn more about the documents, please get it from the standard bodies and go through each sections and compare with the organization that how it is implementing the specific classes and terms in order to get the certifications.
In this chapter, we'll look into the basic property of security. These properties are organized as CIA, which stands for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Let's look into the first property of security, which is confidentiality. As the name states, the information is available only to the authorized person. We'll understand it with an example. Where authorized user A wants to send a data to authorized user B. Here, we ensure that the data is available only to the authorized user B. Suppose an hacker or a non-authorized user who tries to fetch the data, so you can able to get the data. So here the property of security, which is confidentiality, is not met. So how can we meet the property of security? We use the concept of keys, where these keys will be available only to the authorized user A and authorized user B. So let's understand it with a real life example, where we lock the door with a key and we unlock the door with the same key. The same concept relies here, where authorized user A encrypts the plain text using the key and send the encrypted data to the authorized user B. and authorized user B decrypts it using the same key which authorized user A used and gets the actual plain text. So by this we derive the concept of encryption and decryption to meet the property of confidentiality. Even if hacker gets the data, he or she will not be aware of the key, so the hacker cannot decrypt the data. So we'll look into the next properties in the upcoming sessions. About the next property of security, which is integrity. As the name states, it ensures that the data or the information is not modified by an unauthorized user. So how we achieve it? We achieve it through the MAC or hash. Let's understand it with an example where authorized user A sends the data to authorized user B. Suppose an unauthorized user or an hacker who tries to modify the data in between and sends the modified data to authorized user B. So now an question arises, how authorized user B knows that the data is modified in between? So it is by using the concept of hash or MAC. Let's understand the hash concept in depth. We'll see a positive scenario where authorized user A calculates the hash for the data which he or she wants to send to authorized user B. Now, the authorized user A will not send only the calculated hash. He or she will send the actual data along with it. Now, the calculated hash and the actual data will be sent to authorized user B. Once the authorized user B received the calculated hash and the actual data from authorized user A, authorized user B will now calculate again the hash for the actual data he received from authorized user A. If the calculated hash from authorized user A matches with the hash calculated by the authorized user B, then will attain the integrity of the data. By this, authorized user B understands that the data is not modified in between the communication medium. Let's see a negative scenario where authorized user A sends the actual data plus calculated hash to authorized user B. Unfortunately, an non-authorized user interrupts the channel and sends his own data. Now, the channel is with the data from non-authorized user and the calculated hash from the authorized user A. Now, authorized user B will calculate the hash for the data he received from the non-authorized user. Since non-authorized user interrupts the channel, so once authorized user B calculates the data he received from non-authorized user, obviously the hash will not be same. And authorized user B will now understand that somewhere in between the channel, someone has hacked the system and the data has been changed. And he will aware of that too. By this, authorized user B will not use this data since it is not from authorized user A. Let's see the last property of security, which is availability. By this property, the system ensures that the data is available for the user at the right time. There is a famous quote which states that the data which is not available at the right time is not useful anymore. We'll understand this with a real life example. I want to book a movie ticket using an online platform. So we have a payment step where we pay the money through our debit or credit card. While paying, we will be receiving an OTP, one-time password, in our registered mobile. Once we enter the received OTP in the OTP validation step, before the expiry time expires, we will be able to book the ticket at the right time. So here the data is nothing but the OTP, which is available at the right time before the session time expires. So this is a positive scenario where I enter the OTP received on time and I can able to book the movie ticket. So let's take a negative scenario where I didn't receive the OTP before the expiry time expires. So I can't able to book the ticket, but I received it after the OTP time expires due to network glitches in my mobile network. So by this, we understand that the data which is OTP which is not available at the right time and it is not useful for me. So when we relate that to the automotive scenario where an hacker can take the control of vehicle and send a CAN message continuously and make the bus busy, by this hacker ensure that the user cannot make use of the network for the normal functionality of the vehicle. In this session, we'll understand the meaning of cryptography and the basic terminology of the cryptography. So cryptography refers to securing the data and meets the basic criteria of security such as confidentiality, integrity, and the availability. So without further delay, let's understand the basic terminologies of cryptography. First, the plain text, which is nothing but the data which sender wants to send to the receiver, and it is the original message which he wants to send to the receiver. So let's take an example where A, B, C, D, E are the original message, and here comes the concept of key and cipher. So here the cipher is nothing but the algorithm which we use. So it can be symmetric or asymmetric algorithm. We'll see the algorithm part in depth in the upcoming session. Right now we'll take AES algorithm which is under symmetric algorithm, and we'll use the key along with it to encrypt the data. And we got the cipher text. So what is the meaning of encryption? Encryption is process of converting the original message to the encoded message using cipher and the key. So here 0101010111 is the encoded message, which is nothing but the cipher text. So let's assume that the message which we send from the sender has been received by the receiver. So now the receiver wants to get the original data. So the receiver used the same cipher and the key which sender used to decrypt the data and got the original message which is ABCDE. So what is the meaning of decryption? Decryption is process of retrieving the encoded message to the original message using the cipher and key. So let's see in depth about the algorithm in the upcoming sessions. Let's see the different types of cryptography algorithm. So one is symmetric and the other one is asymmetric. So in symmetric algorithm, we use same key for encryption and decryption. And in the other hand, asymmetric use two different key. One is private key and other is public key. So the sender uses the public key to encrypt the data and the receiver uses the private key to decrypt the data. So here in the symmetric algorithm, there are two majorly used algorithms. One is AES, Advanced Encryption Standard, and the other one is DES, which is Data Encryption Standard, which comes under symmetric algorithm. So if we see the history of both of them, DES is the older one, founded in 1976 by IBM, whereas AES was designed by Vincent Richmond and John Demon in the year 1999. So the major difference is the plaintext which we can decrypt is of 64 bits in case of DES, but for AES we can decrypt 128 bits, which is double the amount. And the one major difference is the key length is 56 bits in case of DES, and in case of AES we have different varieties of key size like 128, 192 and 256. So by seeing these advantages, if someone wants to go for symmetric algorithm, they prefer AES compared to DES. Let's see about the asymmetric algorithm. So RSA, which stands for Reversed Shamir Adelmans, and been found in later 70s, and ECC, which is nothing but elliptical curve, which is found in later 80s. So if we see the comparison between both of them, The same level of security will be achieved through lesser key size of ECC compared to RSA algorithm. That's the reason future embedded system supports ECC algorithm. So if someone wants to go for asymmetric algorithm, they prefer ECC compared to RSA. But each of them have their own merits and demerits, which we will be seeing it in the upcoming slides. So in the upcoming slides, we'll see in depth about the symmetric and asymmetric algorithm separately, and we'll see about their disadvantage and advantages. See about symmetric algorithm in this session. So symmetric algorithm uses same key for both encryption and decryption. There are several symmetric algorithms such as AES and DES, but the most commonly used symmetric algorithm is AES, which is Advanced Encryption Standard. So in AES, encryption and decryption of data happens in blocks of 128 bits using keys of different size. That's why we have AES 128, AES 192, AES 256. Here 128, 256 and 192 represents the key size, not the block size. The block is fixed as 128 bits for AES. So let's understand this with an example where we want to encrypt the data of 32 bytes. So as per the limitation, we can encrypt only 16 bytes of data in single instance in AES. So we'll take the first 16 bytes of data in block 1 and the next is 16 bytes in the block 2. So there are different modes in AES, but we'll see the mainly used mode. The first one is ECB, which is Electronic Codebook mode. Let's look into the ECB mode. We'll take first 16 bytes as the plain text and we'll use the key and the block cipher to encrypt the data, and we got the cipher text, which is the output of block 1. Then we'll take the remaining 16 bytes as the plain text to the block 2 and we use the same key and the block cipher which we used in the block 1 and will encrypt that data, which is the output of block 2. So this mode is quite straightforward. Let's see the next mode, which is CBC, Cipher Blockchain mode. So here we have plain text and we have an additional member which is IV, which is called as initialization vector, which can be any random number which will be XORed with plain text, and we use the same key and the block cipher to encrypt and got the cipher text, which is the output of block 1. Then for block 2, we'll take the remaining 16 bytes as the input or the plain text, and now we'll take the IV, which is nothing but the ciphertext of the block 1. So we XOR the ciphertext of block 1 with plain text of block 2. And we use the same key and the cipher which we used in the block 1 to encrypt the data. So this is the way how encryption happens in CBC mode. As you see, the IV is randomized for initial blocks, and for upcoming blocks, the IV is taken from the ciphertext of the previous block. That's why when we compare to ECB mode, this mode is more secure, since randomized is added in the initialization vector. And it's been used in many applications like secure boot and inter-secure communication. Following the symmetric key algorithm, let's see about the asymmetric key algorithm. So in symmetric key algorithm, we use same key for encryption and decryption, and it's easily vulnerable for attackers. So if hacker knows the key, it's easy for them to retrieve the actual data, since the sender and receiver are using the same key for encryption and decryption. But in case of asymmetric algorithm, we use the concept of different keys for encryption and decryption of data, where public key is used for encryption and the private key is used for decryption. And the private key is only known to the recipient who needs the data. And there are several different algorithms like RSA, ECC, where this elliptical curve ECC, which is not easy for hackers to hack, and it's been widely used for bitcoins. And this ECC is now being a trending algorithm in automotive security too. So now we'll have a overview of how asymmetric algorithm works, and this is the generic approach for all asymmetric algorithm. Let's say we have a sender and the receiver, where the left person with blue color is the sender and the one with black is the receiver. Let's see how the sender is encrypting the data in asymmetric logic. First, sender will encrypt the plain text with the public key. So this public key is received from the receiver. And once that ciphertext is formed, we'll send the formed ciphertext to the receiver. Once receiver gets the ciphertext, he will decrypt it using the private key. And this private key will be known only to him, not to the sender. Using this private key, he decrypts the data and gets the actual plain text. So this is how the asymmetric algorithm works. As we see, we didn't share the private key. We shared only the public key. Even if hacker gets the public key, he or she can't decrypt the data, since hacker don't have any idea about the private key. By this, we ensure more security, but there is a lag over here is that the computation time will be more compared to symmetric algorithms. So let's see about the advantages and disadvantages of both of them in the upcoming slides. After understanding the symmetric and asymmetric algorithm, let's see the advantages and disadvantages of them. So let's see the symmetric algorithm first. Since we use single key for both encryption and decryption of data, it's more faster and convenient, and the key size is less compared to asymmetric algorithm. So when we want to achieve security for 128 bits data, we need to use 128 bits key length. But in case of asymmetric algorithms like RSA, we need to use 3074 bits to achieve the same level of security. That's the reason key distribution is easy in symmetric algorithm. On the negative aspects of symmetric algorithm, since we have only one key, if hacker gets that key while sharing to the receiver, the hacker can get the data easily. But we have additional key exchange algorithms like Diffie-Hellman, which will get rid of this issue that we will discuss in the upcoming slides. So let's see the asymmetric algorithm. Let's look the advantages of asymmetric algorithm. In asymmetric, since we'll be having two keys, it's more secured. Since we don't share the private key to others, it's more secure. And on the negative side, the computation time is more, since we need to produce two keys, basically the private and the public key, and store those keys. So the computation time is really high in asymmetric algorithm. So now you will think which algorithm to select for the application. So it depends on your application and majorly by the hardware constraint and other security aspects, like if you have a hardware that supports only symmetric, then you can go only for symmetric algorithm. And the cost matters. If you choose hardware which supports asymmetric, the cost will be more. So it depends how you use the algorithm, whether by hardware or software solution. So we'll see about how the algorithms can be implemented by the hardware and the software solution. Let's see how we can achieve the symmetric and asymmetric algorithm in the automotive system. There are two ways to achieve it. One is through hardware solution, where we use automotive trust anchors, and other is using the normal coding, which is nothing but a software solution. We'll first start with the hardware solution, where we use two hardware anchors, which are SHE, which is nothing but secure hardware extension, and the other one is HSM, which is nothing but hardware security model. So C supports only symmetric algorithm like AES, and HSM is the next variant, so it supports both symmetric and asymmetric algorithm. And we'll have a question how the algorithms are running in the hardware. So it is through hardware accelerators. So if you are using the SHE, it supports AES accelerators. And in the hardware solution, there is a separate storage memory to store the keys and the data, and it's really secure compared to the software solution. Then an question arises, then when an developer will go for software solution? Software codes are already developed and it is ready to use. So most of the latest algorithms can be easily integrated with the software solution, since there will be no dependency on the hardware anchors. But in case of security vulnerability, if we take the software solution, there is no separate dedicated hardware for the particular secure storage of keys. So if we go for software solution, it is easily hackable to hackers. Let's see the overview of security related components in the ECU. First, let's have a look into the random number generator. So this random number generators are used to generate seeds and key randomly in many cryptographic systems. And here lies a doubt, what is the difference between TRNG and PRNG? PRNG stands for pseudo random number generator, which is deterministic in nature, whereas TRNG means true random number generator, which is non-deterministic in nature. Then comes the secure boot, where secure boot is used to validate the integrity of the application or the bootloader code. And then the certificate management, which provides the provisions for storage of certificates and a chain of trust so that all public keys used for signature verification are verified. And then comes the most important component, which is key management, where the keys are stored in the secure area. We'll see this model in depth in the next session, because storing the key is more important. If key is vulnerable, then it will be easy for hacker to retrieve the actual data. Then comes the customer application, which is dependent on the customer, who can introduce their own customer API to control the security operations. Here customers are OEMs who use to design their own API calls for the security operations. Let's see about OS, where OS is used to allocate the CPU cores for HSM and other resources like scheduling of tasks. Then the CPU. So there are separate CPU which will be dedicated only to perform HSM operations, and there are even multi-core concept where core 0 will be used for software crypto, core 1 will be used for hardware crypto, and the registers which are used in HSM to perform operations like configuring the peripherals for cryptographic operations. Then the memory, which is non-volatile in nature, which is called as NVM, non-volatile memory, which is used to save keys in secure area. And then the algorithm which we uses, it can be a symmetric or asymmetric algorithm like AES, and asymmetric algorithms like ECC or RSA, and timer and interrupt mode, which is used to configure the timer and interrupt for cryptographic operations, and the hardware accelerators, which is used to perform the main cryptography functions. So these are all the major components which will be presented in an ECU. Let's see the difference between SHE and HSM. So what is mean by SHE? C is nothing but Secure Hardware Extension Module, where HSM stands for Hardware Secure Module. Let's see about the standardization of both of them. C is standardized by HIS consortium, where HIS stands for Herstellar Initiative Software. The HIS consortium was founded in 2004 and consists of members from Audi, BMW, Daimler, Porsche, and Volkswagen. It is formed to address activities and develop common standards related to automotive manufacturing. In 2006, HIS published a document describing the requirement for an HIS security model that incorporate mechanisms for error detection, authorization, and authenticity. Whereas HSM is developed by a group of OEMs, Tier 1, and semiconductors, where OEMs like BMW Group and Tier 1s like Conti, eScript, Bosch, and semiconductor like Infineon. And they called the project as EVITA, which stands for E-Safety Vehicle Intrusion Protected Applications, where the major objective of the EVITA project is to design, verify, and prototype an architecture for automotive onboard networks, where security relevant components are protected against tampering and sensitive data are protected for better vehicular communication. And HSM is derived from C specification, and it has different versions like Evita Small, Evita Medium, and Evita Full. Let's see the second difference between them. She is placed within any ECU via an on-chip extension within a microcontroller unit, whereas HSM is not the on-chip solution. It is a separate chip which is used along with the microcontroller. The next difference is she supports only symmetric algorithm like AES, and it does not support asymmetric algorithm, whereas HSM supports asymmetric algorithm too, like RSA, ECC256, Whirlpool. Since asymmetric algorithm is not supported in C, we can't perform digital signature in C, whereas we can perform digital signature in HSM. Both signature generation and signature verification can be done in HSM. So let's see in which application we can use C and HSM. C can be used for symmetric encryption and decryption. It can be used for secure boot with bootmap key support, and can be used for secure onboard communication with symmetric key support. Whereas HSM is used as a solution for secure boot, secure onboard communication with asymmetric support. But today, modern automotive HSM leverage functionalities from C, and a major advantage is that HSM is having high level of trust and authentication compared to C. We can use it for V2X concept also. If you don't know about the overview of V2X, please enroll in our basic automotive electronics course. I have provided the link in the resource section. Let's see the major component of the security engine, which is key management. As mentioned before, if keys are vulnerable, then it is easy for hacker to retrieve the original data. Key is the main component along with cipher to convert the plain text, so it should be placed securely. Let's take an example of loading symmetric key into the C model. Firstly, we need to load the plain key value, and then the C model will perform a key update protocol, basically the calculation of M1 to M5. This key update is used to ensure that the key should meet the property of security such as confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and protects against replay attack. Then it loads the key which performed the MAC and encryption process using the key update protocol into the secure area, as you can see in the image, which will be the flash region, where the flash region will be partitioned only for the NVM secured area. In case if you want to speed up the process of saving the keys, we can use the key as RAM key also. So saving the keys in NVM will result in reducing the flash write cycle. So we can store keys in RAM area and it will help us for the easy accessible. But the issue is that the RAM key is not secure key. It's only to speed up the development process. Let's see how to load the key in the secure slot. Before going into the storage of keys, let's first understand the different keys supported in the SHE model. SHE supports master ECU key, which is used as an authorizing key and it is reserved. And it has bootmap key, which is used for secure boot purpose. Let's see this in depth on the secure boot session, and this key is also reserved. Then key 1 to key 10, which is used based on the user needs, and it is unreserved keys. And we have RAM key, as we already discussed, that is used to speed up our development process, and it is not a secure key. Let's take 3 scenarios and we'll see the positive and negative scenarios of loading the keys. So let's first take how to change the master key. Before loading the new keys, we need to load the master key. So how can we do it? By using the initial master key provided by the silicon vendors, we can use that key as an authorization key and load the new master key. Second scenario, how to load the new key into the secure slot. First, we need to load the master key. Then if you want to load the new keys, you need to use the master key as an authorization key and load the new key. So then we'll think how to reset the keys. For resetting the keys, the master key should be known. Then only the resetting of keys can be done. Let's see a positive scenario where we can load the key 1. So first we'll load the master key and then we'll load the key 1. So let's see a negative scenario where we load the key 1 with the wrong master key value. So once you load the wrong master key value and if you try to load the new key, we can't able to load the new key since our master key is wrong. Let's see about the key exchange algorithm. So diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm is the most widely used key exchange algorithm. So let's start with the problem statement and we'll understand what is the solution for it. The first problem statement. How can you securely exchange information with someone where you ever met them to share your key? The second one. What happens if you want to send the symmetric key with other over an insecure channel? So the problem statements are clearly defined and the solution to it was the Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm. So it then can be used with symmetric key algorithm to transmit the information in a protected manner. So to give you a summarize, here the transmit information. So information is nothing but the key. So if the sender and receiver want to share their keys, but they should not share the exact secret key, because if the secret key is sent in the channel, an hacker can take it. But there is a concept behind or logic behind how to send a key by not sending the actual key. So the logic behind that is the Diffie-Hellman key exchange algorithm. Let's understand that with a pictorial representation. So let's take two entities. One is Autronics and one is the customer. So if Autronics want to send their secret key, but they should not send the actual secret key directly. So let's understand in depth with this example. So first, Autronics settles on a secret number X, which is 3, while the customer chooses their own secret number Y, which is 6. And In most basic form of diffie-Hellman exchange, Autonomous and customer mutually decides upon two numbers to start with, and these are modulo n and base g, as you can see in the formula. So modulo n is very large prime number, whereas base g is relatively small for simplification of the calculation. So let's say that both the entities are agreed upon modulos n as 11 and the base g as 7, as you can see in the formula. Then Autonomous will calculate this and get his own number, which is a. So Autonomous calculated the number a, which is 2. Here customer also calculates the same thing and he got the number 4. So now Autonomous will send the number a is equal to 2 to customer, and the customer will send it to b, which is 4, to Autonomous. So now again will replace the base g with the secret number with both the parties got from the other entities. So we replace the base g with the secret number which they got it from the other parties. So we replace the g with b. So now b is 4, and in case of customer it is replaced with a. So now Autonomous is calculating the formula and he derived a key which is 9, and the customer also calculated the key which is also 9. So you can see they didn't share the actual secret key which is 9, they just shared the derivation of that one. So by this we ensure that we can use this along with the symmetry key logic to share the secret key in a secure way. Let's see the AutoSOR architecture. AutoSOR, Automotive Open System Architecture, is a worldwide development partnership of automotive interested parties, founded way back in 2003. AutoSOR provides a standardized open software architecture for the automotive ECUs. AutoSOR is a consortium of automotive giants such as Toyota, BMW, Volkswagen, Ford, Daimler, General Motors, Bosch, and PSA, which aims to standardize the software architecture for the automotive industry. Let's see the different layers in the AutoSOR. The first one, which is the application layer, which is the topmost layer of the AutoSOR software architecture and supports custom functionalities. This layer consists of specific software component, which is mentioned as SWC. So this SWC are applications such as AEB. So we can assume that automatic emergency braking as a software component 1, and lane keep assist as the software component 2, and cruise control as the software component 3. And the communication between each software component is enabled via specific ports using virtual function bus. These ports also facilitate communication between software components and the AutoSOR base software. Then let's see about the RTE layer, which is nothing but runtime environment, which provides communication services to the application software. So this RTE provides ECU independent interfaces to the application software component. The software component communicate with other software component. It may be inter or intra ECU via the RTE. So to summarize, the RTE is used to provide communication within the ECU, or it can be outside the ECUs, and it acts as a bridge between the application software and the base software. Let's see the base software. So the base software is further divided into 3 layers: service layer, ECU abstraction layer, microcontroller abstraction layer. So let's see about service layer. Service layer is the topmost layer of the basic software, which also applies its relevance for the application software. It provides an independent interfaces of microcontroller and the ECU hardware to the application software. The service layer offers functionalities like operating system, vehicle network communication, memory services like NVRAM management, diagnostic services like UDS. Since we are focusing only on the AutoSAR crypto stack and it needs the communication stack, we just mentioned in the slide only about the COM, PDUR, SecOC and CSM, where SecOC and CSM is dedicated only for the AutoSAR crypto stack. Let's see about ECU abstraction layer. ECU abstraction layer interfaces the drivers of the microcontroller abstraction layer. It also contains drivers for external devices within the ECU and provides an abstraction for various peripheral hardware. It provides interfaces to access all features of an ECU like communication, memory, I/O. As you can see in the slide, CryEF, which is under the crypto stack, and CANEF, which is been under the communication stack. Then let's see about the microcontroller abstraction layer, which is the lowest layer. This means that the MCAL module can directly access the hardware resources. MCAL contains internal drivers which are software components that are directly accessible to the microcontroller. As the name resembles, MCAL layer makes the upper layer independent of the hardware. Here you can see CRY, which is nothing but the crypto layer, which can be a crypto hardware or which can be crypto software also. And if you see the CAN stack, CAN, which is nothing but the MCAL abstraction layer. And then the HSM or the SHE, which is the security model which performs the cryptographic operation. And then the microcontroller, where it can be in the microcontroller from any silicon vendors like NXP, Renesas, Infineon or Texas Instrument. So, and there comes a special component called CDD, complex device driver. So sometimes the OEMs cannot perform all their requirement in AutoSAR. So that time they will follow the legacy approach without AutoSAR. That they call it as CDD, complex device driver. This complex device driver fulfills the special functions and the timing requirement needed to operate complex sensors and actuators. Let's understand the flow of AutoSAR stack. After understanding the models of crypto stack like CSM, CryEF, Cry, let's see how the message between different models are communicated and formed as a secured message. First, the message data, which is non-secure IPDU, which is nothing but the non-secure message, will be sent from COM. So once it reaches PDUR, the PDUR sends that to SecOC, which is also nothing but the non-secured IPDU. So from SecOC, it passes to the CSM, where job will be processed. Here a job can be encryption or it can be signature generation. And then the data is sent to CryEF and to crypto hardware or software through the channel. And the Cry model will apply the actual algorithm. For example, it can be symmetric or asymmetric and sends the secured data back to SecOC again. So then in SecOC, a model called freshness value is added that we will discuss much deeper in the next slides. Then from SecOC, the secured IPDU is formed. So secured IPDU is consist of authenticate IPDU, truncated freshness value plus the truncated authenticator. So this is how the secure message is formed in the SecOC model. I'm able to see in this presentation, from SecOC, the secure IPDU will again pass it to the PDUR, and from PDUR, the message will be sent to the CAN, the driver layer, and from the CAN, it is sent to the automotive bus, nothing but the CAN bus, to the other issues. See the different components of crypto stack in depth. First, let's see about the CSM, which refers to Crypto Service Manager. CSM is based on the concept of job where you can configure any security functions like encryption, decryption, and CMAC. And it supports multiple jobs where you can configure multiple jobs so we can use multiple security functions in parallel. It supports synchronous and asynchronous mode, which is nothing but synchronous and asynchronous job. Let's see about asynchronous job. Asynchronous job are not processed immediately when calling a corresponding function. Usually, the caller is informed via a callback function when the job has been finished. The next one is synchronous job. Synchronous jobs are processed immediately when calling a corresponding function. And when the function returns, the results will be available. So let's understand with an example. So as you can see here, we have two jobs. The job one, which is for encryption, which is also called as crypto primitive, which has a key reference 1. The job 2, which is for MAC verification, which has a key reference 2, where a key can be referenced by a job in the CSM. In the crypto driver, the key reference refers a specific key type. Here, as you can see, these jobs are passed to the CRI-F through a queue. So now you will get a doubt which will go first. So it depends on the priority of the job. For example, if job 1 is of high priority, then job 1 will be passed in the queue. So let's see about the below layer, which is CRI-F, nothing but crypto interface layer. It is an interface layer which connects the CRI and CSM, and it acts as an abstraction layer to crypto hardware and software. It contains channels where multiple hardware objects are mapped to a channel. Here, a channel is a path from a crypto service manager to the specific crypto driver object, as you can see in this representation. So CRI-F has a channel which helps to pass the object from CSM to the CRI. So let's see about the crypto driver object, which is nothing but CRI. So it provides hardware and software objects where the actual crypto algorithms are used, and it provides the key that can be used for the security functions. So as you can see in the image, from the CSM, the job will be processed and it will be sent to the queue, and it comes to the channel of the CRI-F and it reaches the crypto hardware object. So here the crypto hardware object has two primitives basically. One is for encryption and another is for MAC verification, and it has two key which is already referred in the CSM. So this is how the message flows from the CSM to the CRI layer. See about security. What is the meaning of security? Security stands for Secure Onboard Communication. So it establishes secure communication and it protects the data in PDU level. Future of security. It ensures the integrity using MAC generation and the protection in the PDU level. So how does a secured frame looks like? As we discussed earlier, the message data, which is non-secured message, is called as authentic IPDU. Then we'll perform MAC operation on it. So MAC is nothing but message authentication code. So the message authentication code is performed over the message data or the actual data and the data ID plus the freshness value using the key. Then that is called as authenticator. Then we'll add the freshness value along with it. We'll see the freshness value in depth in the coming slide. Since we have a length constraint, we can't send the entire authenticator and the freshness value. We can just send the security auth info tx length of the authenticator and security freshness value tx length of the freshness value. That is called as truncated freshness value plus truncated authenticator. So now we derive the secured IPDU, which normally consists of authentic PDU, truncated freshness value, and truncated authenticator. And this secured IPD will be output from security model after passing the below crypto layers like CSM, CRIF and crypto. We'll see in depth about the freshness value in the next slide. So let's see what is the need of freshness value. So the freshness value is used to synchronize between the sender and the receiver ECU, and it is used to prevent the replay attack. Let's see how the freshness value looks like. A freshness value consists of trip counter, reset counter, message counter and the reset flag. Let's see one by one clearly. So let's take a trip counter. Trip counter is a counter which will be sent from sender ECU as a synchronous message. So let's first have a look how a synchronous message looks like. A synchronous message consists of trip counter, reset counter and the authenticator, which is nothing but the MAC. So let's go back again to the trip counter and understand it much better. Trip counter is a counter which will be sent from the sender ECU as a synchronous message, as you can see in the below image, to the receiver ECU. All the sender and receiver ECUs maintains this trip counter value. Let's see about the reset counter. Reset counter is incremented periodically by the ECU on the reset cycle. This is also a counter which will be sent from the sender ECU as a synchronous message to the receiver ECU. Let's see about message counter. This counter is incremented with every secure message transmission by the sender ECU. So, if sender sends a secure message, then the message counter will be incremented. Let's see about the reset flag. This flag is updated in the synchronization with the reset counter. So, in order to make it more clear, we'll have an example and we'll see how the flow happens and how the counters are incremented in the next slide. We'll understand the freshness value topic with the demonstration. So let's take the sender ECU and the receiver ECU, where sender ECU will first send the sync message 1. This sync message 1 contains the trip counter value as 1 and the reset counter value as 1. Now the receiver ECU will be updated with the trip count value as 1 and reset count value as 1. Now sender sends the normal secured message and the message counter value will be updated to 1 in the receiver side. And once again the sender ECU sends one more secured message and the message counter value will become 2 now. And now again, to make sure that the sender is synchronized with the receiver, the sender ECU sends another sync message with trip counter value as 2 and the reset count value as 2. And this is being stored in the receiver ECU. But let's assume the receiver ECU is already with the trip count value 2 and reset count value 2. This time, sender is sending the trip count value as 3 and reset count value as 3. Now the receiver compares the trip count value and the reset count value with the previous value. It will not be same. Since the previously stored counter is 2 and now the sender is sending 3. So by this, the receiver ECU understands that the synchronization is not between them and the system has been hacked through the replay attack. We'll see in depth about the attacks in further slides. Following the understanding of the freshness value, let's see what happens if the MAC verification fails. So as you can see in the image, the left side is the sender ECU and the right side is the receiver ECU. So in the sender ECU, the MAC generation will be performed. So what is the meaning of MAC generation? MAC generation is the process of calculating the MAC for the data and the freshness value with the secret key. So this generated MAC will be sent from the sender ECU to the receiver ECU using the CAN protocol. So once it is been received to the CAN, it's been forwarded to the SecOC. So in the receiver side, then the MAC verification is done. in the AutoSolve crypto stack. So what is the meaning of MAC verification? MAC verification is the process of calculating the MAC again with the received data and the freshness value along with the same secret key which we used in the sender side. So let's see a scenario when the MAC verification fails in the receiver side. By this, we can understand that the data is being changed by an hacker and it is not a secure data. Since it is failed, the PDU will not be available to the upper module, which is PDUR. Suppose if we send the data to the PDUR, then the PDUR will pass that data to the application software, which will affect the application software. Since the application software does the exact functionality of a car like ABS, so here an hacker can take the control of the braking components and apply the brake whenever he can and cause an accident. Let's see a scenario where the MAC verification passes in the receiver side and the PDU will be sent to the PDUR. From PDUR, it is passed to the application software. So here we assure that the application software is secured. We'll see about secure boot. What is secure boot? The mechanism by which boot code in flash area is verified and allows the microcontroller to start the application only after the authenticity and integrity of the boot code is verified. Why we need secure boot? To secure the firmware from attacks by performing authenticated boot process and to avoid unauthorized access. So how can we achieve it? So first we'll partition the flash for boot area. So as you can see, we need to configure the flash basically. So the flash which we configured will be separated for boot code and that's some area where we store the keys and the boot MAC and the application code where the actual application sits like ABS and the ESP. So now we'll load the boot MAC key using the authorized master key. And the MAC which will be calculated for bootloader code is called as boot MAC, which will be calculated using the help of boot MAC key. We'll store the boot MAC in the secure memory slot as you can see. So on reset, HSM calculates again the boot MAC for the boot code using the boot MAC key. Then the secure boot will compare the boot MAC with the stored boot MAC key. So if the stored boot MAC and the boot MAC which we calculated on the reset is same, then the application will be executed. So let's see a negative scenario where the calculated boot after the reset is not same as the stored boot MAC. So in this scenario, the application code will not be executed. So we stop the system since there is a mismatch in calculation of the boot MAC. So by this will not make any harm to the application code because the application code where the actual functionality of the application runs. Let's say an example, the ABS application code will be placed over there. So if the hackers can get the application code, it's easy for them to apply the brakes anywhere at any time. So secure boot is protecting us from all these kind of attacks.
So friends, I hope you have a good clarity on what are all the cybersecurity terms and how and all we can prevent. But before that, we would like to give you some examples of attacks that can easily hack a vehicle or even a component when it comes to automotive industry. We all know that different protocols, different bus systems that is controlling the vehicle predominantly, and accessing to this bus or accessing to these protocols will easily help the hackers to hack the vehicles. Some of the attacks that we can talk in detail. Number one is sniffing or eavesdrop, then fuzzing, DOS, which is denial of service, injection, replay, impersonations. Basically, these attacks are very basic and there are multiple attacks that are happening in the automotive industry that are even not termed as some keywords like fuzzing or device. By looking into these terms, it could be similar, but each are being used for different kinds of attacks. Let's talk more about sniffing now. What is sniffing? Say for example, you have a vehicle log, which is here in this case it is CAN logs. So if you connect with a CAN OBD and then if you see the traces, it will be appearing. Obviously, this is having the DBC. For us, we have a local DBC, but in your vehicle, if you do not have a DBC, the CAN traces will be raw hexadecimal format where you cannot see this engine data, gateway, door or console messages. But here, since I have a DBC, it shows the proper value of the message along with the description and then properly structured. Basically, sniffing is also called as eavesdrop, which is a process of capturing packets or data in the network when it comes to IT. Normally, sniffing is used to monitor and troubleshoot network issues, but attackers uses these tools or methodology to capture some sensitive information from the vehicle or the component in automotives. Basically, hackers wanted to store this information in such a way that they can use it for analyzing or bring up some plan to attack the vehicle. You may understand or you may ask that anyway my vehicle DBC will not be available with the hacker, but how come he can understand the primary or necessary informations via just this log? Let's have a look around here. Let's say the left side image is just a connection of vehicle logs. It is showing in the display. Now, the attacker's hacker tool can tape out the logs and it is normal as it is. But if he wanted to understand what is the signal for the brake pedal, he can simply make some actions on the vehicle just by pressing the brake pedal, and which message which is corresponding to the values that only will be highlighted, so that he will come to know by playing certain actions what are all the CAN messages that are giving the flow. In turn, he can note it down. He can have the ID, for example, the CAN arbitration ID, and with that he can play around. So likewise, he can understand all the necessary information. Let's say, for example, just by unlocking the door, which message is getting published or activated. That message values he can hack, manipulate, and he can do the performance of hacking the vehicle. Understood? Alright, let's look about the other attack, which is injection. Basically, injection also a similar way with respect to the previous attacks like fuzzing and then the DOS. But injection is slightly different, which is basically the attack is when the attacker ingested untrusted message in the application software. Packet injection is a way where an attacker tries to disrupt or intercept packets from already established network connection. So as I already mentioned, the injections maybe could cause the application software to go corrupted. We can see in an example now. Let's say, for example, the same architecture, we have the same message which has been published, but here not only the message, inside the messages we have the values. So if you see, let's say first 4 bytes of the message, we have the values like this. So when the message has been published, it may have the values as mentioned. But now, with the help of sniffing or a detailed understanding of a system, the hacker can understand the format of the values, and instead of the actual values, he can replace values that can maliciously or potentially threat to the ECU functionalities or the application softwares. So here, for example, same way, same arbitration ID, and you see the second and third byte is completely changed, which could lead to a hack. So if he is publishing here, the ECUs cannot, the ECU will access the message, but the values are harmful to them. So this way also he can hack some of the functionalities in the vehicle. But for this, he need to take away the original message that is coming out from the ECU, and then he can pass through the values which he wanted to ingest into the application software. So there is no duplication here. If you compare the previous one, we are sending the messages for 2 different times, 2 different values, 2 different arbitration IDs, so that either the denial of service or fuzzing can happen. But in here, the value of the message is only once, but inside the message we have the change in bytes which can cause an attack. So for this, mainly the OEMs are targeting to identify what is the message format, and there are many different items. Let's say, for example, the process counter and then the additional CRC checks and so on. So there are vast number of attacks that can happen with respect to this message reading and attacking. Yeah. So let's move ahead for the second attack or third attack, sorry, the denial of service. We'll say DOS. Basically, it is self-explanatory. What is denial of service? Stopping some service by ingesting something. A hacker or a system that attempts to make necessary resources no longer available to genuine users. Yeah. So let's say DOS in CAN bus. Making the bus busy by using a CAN frame priority administration schema and ingest as many as priority frames so that the other users may not get the bus access. Sorry. So this is slightly different than the previous one. The previous one of fuzzing, we intended to hack only the particular ECU by accessing that specific messages. But here, the attacker could hack the entire CAN bus just by sending the messages continuously. Let's have a look at it. So here also in the same way, the same architecture of the vehicle and then the same message is being sent. And it is sent in a regular interval so that the EC2 and EC4 are happy because they are the subscribers of the messages. Now here in this case, the same, but the attacker is started sending the messages multiple times. I mean, let's say if the periodicity of the messages is 10 milliseconds, he can send a message with even 1 millisecond continuously so that the bus will become busy so that all the ECUs which are looking for the other messages will get lost. So here the example conflicts because 002 is very least possible arbitration. So those who knows arbitration, they can easily understand because arbitration works in such a way that the message with lower arbitration wins the bus. So if he can understand the lowest possible arbitration ID, he can ingest the message for multiple times so that the ECUs which are looking for the other information from a different message for critical functions may not get the bus access. That's why he can hack the vehicle. Clear? Let's talk about the attack fuzzing. Fuzzing is a hacking technique which is used to send random bus values, for example, the malicious or invalid values, let's say for example in the CAN network, to make the bus for undefined or unexpected behavior. A hacker can disable engine or change of values in the engine control or body control units parameter using the fuzzing attack. Let's look around an example which we have created in an animated fashion. Let us say in a vehicle there are 4 different ECUs that are connected to the bus. Basically, let's take about CAN. That will be easiest and simple way to understand. And let's say ECU1 is the publisher of arbitration ID 002. It could be any message. So basically the subscribers of these messages are EC2 and EC4, let's say. So this message will be sent out in a proper periodicity in a regular interval and it will be available in the bus. And whenever EC2 and EC4 needs this message, it can subscribe and work on the functions that is needed based on the message. Yeah, this is a normal scenario. So since the messages are available at the right time without any faults, the EC2 and EC4 will be happy to read the message as there is no confusions. Let's look around an attacking scenario here. Let's say the same architecture is present, but an attacker had ingested his mechanism to send some messages in the bus. It is really possible, yeah. So if he is able to hack or if he is able to attack the bus systems via any channels, let's say from infotainment, he can ingest some of the CAN messages like from the sniffing what he understood, what are all the values that are to be sent. Same way, the 002 arbitration message will be also flowing in the vehicle and the attacker also sends the same message at a different intervals. So basically what will happen is these 2 ECUs which are subscriber of these messages, they may go confused. So 002 will have an actual values of the vehicle or decent values of the vehicle or actual vehicle functional behavior in the message, but the hacker's message may have only zero zeros, let's say. So if two different values are coming in the same arbitration ID, the subscriber UCUs get confused. Those who have worked with the CAN messages practically will have these scenarios faced. I can give you another example. Let us say, for example, the vehicle is having the electronic power steering. Okay, so the electronic power steering will work based on the engine RPM. Okay, the engine RPM is reaching more than 700 or 800. At least the engine is cranked, then the power control will be activated and you'll be able to steer smoothly. So for this, the engine control will be in a particular CAN message. Once after receiving this message with a certain value, the EPS can activate. Certain value in the sense either 0 or more than 700. That is the ideal RPM value. Now, via your OBD, if you are connecting with any canalizers or a mechanism which can send a message in OBD with the same engine message arbitration ID, if you simulate a value of 0, your message also will be ingested in the vehicle, and at the same time the engine cranked information also will be sent in the same message to EPS. But the EPS UC will be confused, meaning both will have the same arbitration ID, but one message says that the engine is running, the RPM is 700, but the other message says that the engine RPM is 0. It will be completely confused. In turn, it will not activate the power steering. The steering will be hard. You can better try that if you have some possibilities to access a vehicle. Yeah. Okay. Now let's look into the another attack, which is replay attack. As the name says, replay attack is a node transmits messages that are recorded in such a way that this can be exactly replayed as the same way how it was sent out. So here the hacker is no need to worry about the identifying the message, identifying the values, formulating the same way, and then sending it the same periodicity. Nothing. He can simply record what is happening in the vehicle and he can store it, and at the time of hacking he can replay that so that the system understands actually the other ECU sending the messages. And basically in that injection also he can bring in the malicious elements. Let's have a look around two different ECUs that are sending the messages. You see the message sequences are 2, 5, 6 and so on. So these are all the certain intervals the ECU1 sends, and it is satisfying the ECU2, the basic criteria, let's say CRC and the values, the format, all those. So ECU2 can easily happily accept that what and all the messages are that are coming in. But now let's say hacker had hacked the bus, and through some tools he is able to capture all the data which are recorded. Let's say from starting point A to starting point B, which is having some 20 kilometers, the vehicle had driven all this 20 kilometers values. He had hacked the values from ECU1. There are many smart tools that can be available in the market which can store all the elements if you define the criteria. Let's say if you wanted to hack only the ECU1 messages or only the ECU2 messages, all the frequency things or maybe particular messages, all this can be shortlisted and that can be recorded. This is at the time of recording. Now when it comes to replay, directly the hacker can ingest these messages to ECU2. So basically he can either isolate ECU1 or he can also send along with the way which is present with ECU1. At the end, ECU2 will be not able to understand what is happening, or it may behave abruptly. Let's say in this case, if ABS is hacked, we can send out the messages which are coming out from the other ECUs to ABS, and while driving the ABS can behave abnormally. Even in fact it will not be able to allow you to accelerate. So in that way it is very easy for a hacker to hack the vehicle. It is nothing like that they need to drive the vehicle, no? Even stopping the vehicle becomes a potential attack through which he can do anything. So all over the attacks, replay is very simple, that the hacker has to record the data and then he has to replay the data. Only this tool is to be smart enough.
Friends, before we conclude with all these methodologies and terms that we talked about, I would like to show a live example which was present already in the internet, you would have already known, but it will be really interested to see this video now with this contest. Tesla vehicle that has been hacked in 1